That's kind of what we dived into this time last year. Doesn't feel like a year, I can tell you that much. It feels like 5 minutes. Everything's just kind of happened. All right, so a few interesting things that are going to happen today besides what you might expect. I've already told you that our special guest this morning will be the Public Protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela. I'm very, very excited to have her here. This is a major guest. It's one of my top 10 dream list guests, and we finally got her in here on an auspicious day like our birthday, which is also Workers' Day. So if you are one of those people who's actually working today, it's ironic, but the day is especially for you. Now, the exciting thing is that besides the Public Protector today, we're also going to launch something that hasn't been done before. We did this last year. We've got to do it this year and every year from here on in. Unradio and now UnTV. So Greg is busy fiddling with it right at the moment. But if you go on to CliffCentral.com, you will be able to see what's happening in the studio. It's not enough to just hear it now. And we'll be doing this periodically. It's not like it's going to be streaming the whole time. So we'll give you the opportunity when there are things that are worth seeing in the studio. We'll switch on the cameras and you can have a look. And you can actually be a part of this very, very exciting new development. UnTV. Aren't you thrilled? Isn't it special? Isn't it magical? Isn't it great? I love it. A few messages I just want to get to before Thuli Madonsela comes in. Trish says, I'm so glad to be part of the Cliff Central family. It's been entertaining, informative, and inspirational. Happy 1 year. And then someone who's just, their number is up. It doesn't come up as a name. When you announced that you and the team were leaving radio, I was a bit lost. But you just took radio to a new level, and I was excited. Ben, you're great, but more Formula One, please. Guys, thanks for making my mornings, and happy birthday. Oh, there we go. The name is Nayan. P.S. Thanks for killing radio. Rajesh says, happy birthday, Cliff Central. Been listening since day one. Been late for work since day one. Keep it coming. And that's very, very cool. I mean, not that you were late for work, but thank you very much for your support. It is really the most important thing. Now, there couldn't be a person in South Africa who is in a tougher job than the guest that we have for this morning. The guest that we have is none other than the Public Protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, who really has one of the most difficult mandates that anyone could have in a constitutional democracy. She has the unenviable task of having to bring to book and having to check and regulate and make sure of all the adherences to the Constitution that make us a constitutional democracy. The real big boss in South Africa is the people. The people of this country get to say what they want from government. They get to demand that government follow certain rules themselves. And we all decided a long time ago that we would be subject to the Constitution. Now, why it's an unenviable task is kind of obvious, because there isn't any job anywhere that is more onerous, that is more complicated, and that is more difficult to execute without stepping on people's toes, and some very powerful people's toes, which occasionally happens. I'm delighted to have Advocate Thuli Madonsela here. Good morning, Advocate Madonsela. How are you?
Gareth, and good morning to your team. Congratulations on a year of success.
Thank you. I've seen you occasionally will retweet something that we'll say, or you're paying attention to what we're doing, and I'm honored. I really am. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to watch you growing.
Thank you. I think we're both fans of freedom of speech. We're both fans of freedom of access to information. And I think that that's something that we have in common. But really, that's where the similarities stop, because I do this ridiculous show, and you have real consequences that you bring to bear when you make decisions and findings.
Never underestimate what you do. I actually think that people in civil society that take a stand against injustice, against wrongdoing, are the real courageous heroes, because you don't have to do it. And you do it. And somebody thinks, what's your story? Why don't you look the other way? But you refuse to look the other way. In my case, in my team's case, we do a job we're hired to do. And if we don't want to do that job, we have an option to resign.
I think you have that option, but I don't see you exercising it until you've completed what you think is your task here, right? You're not the kind of person to shy away from responsibility.
Certainly not. Not this one, because for me it's a privilege to do this job, to be in a space in your lifetime where you can make a difference in people's lives every day of your life, and you can see some of that difference happening in Gogo Dlamini, whose pension had not been paid, or UIF money had not been paid, or the small business person whose business was about to go under, and you're able to rescue it by getting him paid. And the little pennies that you rescue back from wrong pockets and put that money back into paying for schools, for roads, for toilets in rural areas, it gives us enormous joy that we have this privilege.
You've said it before that every cent that you can save the taxpayer that's gone in a corrupt fashion to someone it shouldn't have gone to is money that now can be spent on things that could improve the country.
Absolutely. And it is actually in line with what the regulatory framework says, because it prohibits unlawful enrichment, or what it calls improper enrichment, because public funds, public resources and public power are meant for just that, the public.
Now, you've spent the last couple of days in Parliament arguing that your department, which I think haven't you had your budget sliced a little bit? Now you need more money to operate at the level that you need to operate at. You were putting to Parliament that you need another 200 million.
Certainly. It has not been sliced. I must just say to the ministers of finance over the years that we have been treated fairly, that every year we've gotten an increase, and sometimes more than inflationary increase. However, there is an organizational structure that was approved by Parliament in 2009.
Right.
That politicians approved it, but after that it had to be subjected to a technical exercise to check whether or not we deserved those positions. It was submitted to the Minister of Finance, who, after checking it, was not convinced that the structuring of the posts was proper. It was sent to DPSA. It was subjected to work study officers, who are people who go to university to study organizational design and how work.
So it's very thorough, right?
It's very thorough. And eventually they came back and approved 598 posts. That went to the Minister of Public Service and Administration, who has authority to approve, and approved. And then it went to the Minister of Finance, who had authority to approve in 2013 and approved. That's the money that we need. It's about 162 million for the posts.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, we have had to upgrade our case management system to ensure efficiency, to ensure ability to track cases, so that we don't have any case that falls under the radar, and also to beef up our call center. That makes up the 200 million, which would then be in addition to the 246 million that we already have in the bag, because that's the money that the Minister of Finance has determined that this year we deserve that money. But he also said we must then engage politicians for extra money, because he is convinced that we need extra money.
Well, I suppose it's not as if you're treated unfairly. Everybody who wants to have an increase in their budget, or who needs more money from the Treasury, needs to go and put their case to Parliament. So all you were doing was going there to say, listen, guys, this is what I need to do. And I'd imagine that the largest part of your expenses, as you've already detailed to some degree, it must be the cost of skilled personnel.
It certainly is. Yes, we went to Parliament precisely to do that. And the invitation said that, come and present your budget, your strategy, and your annual performance plan. And we did that. But to be rubbished and told we presented the wrong narrative?
But who said that?
That's strange. It's the chairperson, and I really think that his comments are improper.
Is that
and they're not laughable.
Motshekga?
I think what Dr. Motshekga has done is not a laughing matter. He is wrong. He is just totally out of order. He's totally out of order, because the documents are in writing. So it's not a narrative that you're talking about something we talked about in the privacy of his office. You're talking about a written presentation that was given to him 2 weeks before the event. He was also asked if he had any personal preferences in terms of what else should I be saying.
Which is
And
unnecessary.
he chose not to exercise that option. And he told Parliament on that day that he chose not to exercise
But then
that
he
option.
went on some radio show and he said
Yes.
the Public Protector has a mandate to support and strengthen democracy, and her office is a very important office. That we couldn't disagree with.
Absolutely.
Now we have a Parliament to support her, but in
Yes.
supporting her, we have to ensure that she understands her mandate and her powers, and that the money given to her is well managed, and that she accounts for it properly. Is he saying that you haven't managed the money properly, that you haven't accounted for it
Suggesting that-
properly?
But I think also Dr. Motshekga does not understand his mandate, with due respect. And I'm prepared to have an engagement with him on this. And I've written to the Speaker to say we must sit down. These childish games must stop. His mandate is not to teach me how to do my job. I'm a grown person. I was determined a fit and proper person to exercise my mandate. And I alone have been given the discretion to choose what cases I take and what cases I don't take. But that mandate, I have the power to delegate that mandate to anyone in my office to exercise. And I have delegated that mandate to 20 triaging officers in 20 offices of the Public Protector. So we have those teams that look at what comes in. Is it within our remit?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's within our remit, we decide, is it good that we should take this matter? Is it in the best interest?
How do you weigh those things up? Do
public?
you go, is this an injustice, a gross injustice that we need to deal with? Because you said just now you could get
Yes.
some Gogo her
Yes.
unemployment insurance fund money.
Yes.
It could be her. It could be investigating a very important minister. How do you decide
Exactly.
what you have to do? To prioritize these things must be an unbelievably difficult task.
Well, that's a good question. We have different work streams. Therefore, the Gogo Dlamini cases do not have to compete with the corruption and ethics cases. Initially, we had 3 branches that were doing this. We've now divided them into 2, which distinguishes between what you call ombudsman work, administrative justice, and the governance issues such as corruption, improper use of public funds, and ethics. So these, when they come to the triaging team, it firstly looks, is this within our remit? Yes, but then test 2, are we the most suitable institution to do this? And then they would then say, but maybe the Public Service Commission can do this. Maybe the military ombud, the tax ombud, etc. They do that. And then once they've then determined that we are the best to do this because those others perhaps do not have a mandate to do it, or if they do have a mandate, they don't have the same remedies as us, then they decide that we should take it. And we've sent this triaging form to Dr. Thuli Madonsela that shows how the triaging is done. We drew an organogram for him that shows that it moves from point A to point B, and it then shows how the things split into the different branches. And it also indicated the questions that are asked. And then only if we deem ourselves the most suitable institution to assist, we will assist. Some of it would be an emergency, like the case I related to Parliament, which sadly Dr. Motshekga says was irrelevant. Which begs the question, is he chairing the right committee? He said a case that was dealing not only with administrative injustice, but also with systemic governance failure when it comes to managing funds that are supposed to pay for bursaries for students at universities, was irrelevant.
I wonder if maybe, and this is pure speculation, that maybe there's just a desire to be controversial on his part, because from what you're telling me, there isn't really a need for anyone to have any argument or to make these childish remarks. There's just a job to be done.
I have written to the Speaker to say, I really don't know what is Dr. Motshekga's story. Let's sit down so that he can come to the party and tell me what is the story. Because in my letter to the Speaker that I sent yesterday, I attached the invitation from Dr. Motshekga, which told me what he expected from me. I also attached my letter of the 14th of April, where I asked him if he has any spatial peculiarities in terms of what else he wants me to address. And then I come then and I present based on the fact that I have to present my strategy, budget, and APP. He says all three of us said irrelevant things. And now he's not even just insulting me. He is insulting my chief executive officer and my chief financial officer. These are senior civil servants. Our chief executive officer has just resigned from the Department of Transport to come and lead this ship. And she is told on her first appearance to Parliament that you're crazy.
I wonder how you got to be as assured of yourself as you are, because it's not an easy thing to be in a position like yours in the first place, but it's much, much harder. And I think you've always been like this. I read a bit of your biography where you turned down the chance to become an MP on one occasion. You were meant to be elected to various roles in the past where you've declined because you wanted to do some very specific things.
Really, I think for me, it's all about playing to your strengths. Part of the reason organizations are dysfunctioning and countries are dysfunctioning is people allow themselves to be promoted beyond their leadership threshold. I have always had a sense of what I can do and what I can't do. Of course, I am always amazed and consider it a privilege that people think I can do other things as well. And I can't be a politician because my sense of things is really playing a role around justice, around advising, around sitting on the side and helping others to do what they need to do.
Where did you come from? Where did where did all of this sense of right and wrong and what you wanted to do with your life come from? I mean, I read that you grew up in Johannesburg, but let's be specific. Tell me about your early life.
It's chance, it's parenting, chance, religion, and schooling. I was born in Johannesburg. I grew up between Soweto and Swaziland. So
you went to school in Swaziland.
I've been
right?
influenced by rural Swaziland and also influenced by urban Soweto, and all of those influences come from a very religious family. My father was a disciplinarian. He had been brought up in the farms in Dachaskrol. In Dachakro in Mpumalanga, and he had always had to work.
Was he a laborer?
He had grown up in a laboring community, but as soon as he was able to get out of the farm, he went to work. He had been a laborer working in the electrical sector for all his life. But he worked hard. I mean, for as long as I was alive, as long as I can remember, we always had a car at my house. So he worked hard and got himself a car. He never got an opportunity to go to school because in the farms they were not allowed to go to school.
Of course.
He taught himself how to read and write. Well, he mostly read the Bible and then just wrote letters. And my church played an important role in the work I did. But in the 80s, then there were other influences. Today is Workers' Day, and
of course you did so much work for the unions.
Yes, I was part of the original negotiation team that formed COSATU. So happy Workers' Day to Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was on the same team I was on, Jay Naidu, Mr. Ndo, who is now just no longer in government, and various other people. So
do you think COSATU, I mean,
my life
let's just break for a point here and talk about COSATU, because there's a lot going on there too at the moment. When you see these squabbles for leadership and you see people splitting the unions in half and doing all of this, does it make you a little bit sad because you were there at the birth of this amazing movement?
Fancy you should ask me that question. I had that nostalgia this morning. When I woke up, I had a very heavy heart about COSATU.
I thought you'd come in red.
And yes, I thought about that as well, but I couldn't find a red top.
You look spectacular. I mean, whatever you've done, you just have such a grace and a presence. You walked in here and everybody sort of stopped what they were doing. And it's not because of your office. You have some, there's a power in your presence.
That's very kind.
No, it's
Thank
true.
you.
I very seldom have a guest who comes in here and I sort of have to take a step back and catch my breath. It's an impressive human being you are.
That's very, very kind. And if I were a little bit lighter, I would be blushing at this stage.
So tell me about COSATU. You said you were feeling
it's
nostalgic.
sad to know that COSATU is breaking. And what saddens me is that when we negotiated the formation of COSATU, it was not as a political organization. It was about worker unity. It was about feeling that divided workers can be defeated. And
Right.
we had looked at worker movements all over the world, in the Western world, etc., that we needed to be united. And beyond having worked in COSATU, a few years ago, I was the chairperson of the South African Labour Development Trust. When I came there were tensions between COSATU, FEDUSA, and NACTU. And coming from that spirit of a united labour front is important. I worked with that team. They can confirm that I worked with that team impartially. I never took side, even though I had been brought in by COSATU, and obviously they were my comrades. I never took side. I always was about what is the right thing to do. But by not taking side, I created unity in the team. By the time I left the SALDT, which was 5 years later, the team, there was a sense of collegiality, there was a sense of friendship, but there was a sense of being able to differ without insulting, belittling, and forgetting what's important.
I want to get back to you in a second, but you've just hit on something that's really, to me, essential for us to understand in South Africa. You don't have to agree all the time to be comrades.
Certainly.
And you don't always have to be loyal to be a good person who's doing the best for the country.
Exactly. I actually think, though, you can be loyal. I mean, when I chaired the SALDT, my heart was still with the COSATU group because that's where I come from, and COSATU is our baby. But loyalty does not mean dishonesty.
So
In fact,
if
because they were my
COSATU
friends, I could tell them when they were wrong.
And if COSATU
Kindly.
behaved in a way that you thought was unethical or immoral with
Exactly.
regard to the others, you would have told them that. In other words,
fact-
your
in fact-
loyalty doesn't give them a blanket ability to do whatever they like.
In fact, my loyalty gave me an opportunity to be able to speak to them as friends. And when I'm asking them to come to the party, they would know that it comes from a good space, and they would be able to then follow. And that then created a cohesive team that just focused on workers' education, because the South African Labour Development Trust was bringing them together to organize worker education, not political education of workers, which is important. We were the first to educate workers on politics, on capitalism and problems around capitalism. But the essence was really to educate them around how to organize their colleagues better so that they can negotiate and for better wages. Because a better educated leadership of workers is able to negotiate and win gains without always resorting to strikes and things like that.
Yeah, which is always the default position now. So you've told me all about your dad. What kind of a person is your mum?
My mother was also a very highly ethical person, but what I remember most about my mother is a deep sense of compassion. That sense of always being there to help if there's a home that doesn't have food, if some women and their husband are fighting and the woman has been chased away, which was often happening in those old days, and she's able to step in and come in and bring peace to those families. And again, what I also remember about her is that she's the reason myself and my siblings got educated. It's because she believed that education is the greatest leveler in society. You can start as a president's son, and somebody can start as a farm worker's son. At the end of the day, when you grow up and you're all educated, what becomes of you will depend on your education and what you do after that.
Do you think that young South Africans now are getting the best possible education, that they're growing up in an environment where they can come out and be proud and go for whatever career or future that they'd like to follow?
No, certainly some are, but some are not. I was at Rhodes recently where I was told that
You were honoured with, you've got an honorary doctorate from them. You've already
Yes, I
got
did.
your doctorate, your actual one, but now this is an honorary one.
Well, I don't have an actual one.
You got an LLD from Wits,
No,
Stellenbosch.
no, it was also an honorary one. So I have 3 honorary doctorates.
Wow.
It's LLD, honoris causa, all of them.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
These are for your work.
Yes, they are relating to my work, and I'm grateful for that recognition. But what I heard,
So I should call you Advocate Dr. Thuli Madonsela. I mean, there's so many titles now in front of your name. We'll only
Oh
get
my
to your name at the end.
right? I got disturbing news there that many schools are dysfunctional because of lack of teacher discipline. I was a teacher, an assistant teacher once, which basically meant an unqualified teacher, but fully teaching, not assisting someone else. But there was discipline in schools then. I was told here that one teacher left Rhodes University and decided her contribution to humanity will be to take a school that is dysfunctional and make it functional. And she has done that. But some of the things she has had to do are amazing, which is lock the school ground so that teachers may not leave during the day to go and drink at Shibins. And I'm
This
saying,
happens?
That's improper.
That's unbelievable. So teachers at this school, they would leave during the school day to go and drink at Shabin's.
Yes. So I would say to my colleagues at SATU again, former colleagues at SATU, I was a teacher once under apartheid, and we were not getting all that we deserved. In fact, we were paid next to nothing.
Yeah.
But at the core of what we're trying to do was contribute so that the next generation is going to do better than us. And that's just my appeal to teachers, is that whilst we're trying to reform the actual education system, the human factor is us, human beings. Teachers are human beings, and they should see themselves as change agents, as people who are given this beautiful opportunity to mold the next layer of leaders of this country, of this continent, and of the world.
Now, you helped to mold our Constitution. You were part of that original group of people who helped write our Constitution, with the now Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and many other luminaries of that period in our history where it was such a defining moment. I don't know what role you played. Do you want to just let us in on how much you actually had to do with things?
Oh, certainly it was a privilege to be part of the process. Ultimately, I was part of the 11 technical experts that did the actual drafting. So that experts would draft the Constitution and then would then send it to a theme committee of politicians, and then the politicians would debate and say, we don't like this, we don't like that. And then as the technical people would explain to them why we should do this in this way, instead of the way that they're suggesting, ultimately would end up with formulations that take into account our original draft and the draft that has been accepted through consensus in the theme committee. And in my committee, I was with Professor Thandabantu Nhlapo.
I'm amazed that there's this overlap always between politicians and lawyers, and that often politicians are lawyers, but very often they don't understand the law. And sometimes you need to be able to interpret the law and interpret what politicians want from the law, especially when you're writing something like the Constitution. And it seems that this is almost a theme that's carried on throughout your life, because you find yourself explaining the law to politicians more often than almost anybody.
Well, certainly. I think it was better then, though, that the politicians that we're dealing with were also themselves grouped according to expertise. You will remember that from the National Party, for example, people who would have been governing for many years. Mm-hmm. But from the ANC was ready to govern. People in different structures had been sent to various parts of the world to get ready to govern. So those who dealt with public service and administration were not amateurs in that area. There had been specific people who had been sent to study public service and administration. Those who dealt with constitutionalism, the Bridget Mabandlas, the Albie Sachs, etc., were not just getting into the bandwagon. They had been trained. They had been drafting these things themselves.
So
they were not debating from the blue. They were
no
debating their
Dr.
own text.
Motshekgas.
Well, interestingly, Dr. Matsecha is an expert. I disagree with what he did. In fact, what he did that day was bizarre. Or what he has done since being chairperson has been bizarre. Because he's a lawyer himself. And Dr. Matsecha and I have worked together very well. We were in the committee that drafted the first statute on local government in the new democracy, the Local Government Transition Act. And I served with him in various committees.
So this behavior is confusing.
It was extremely shocking and confusing. Extremely shocking. And it's not because he's uneducated. He's supremely educated.
So who's he playing to? Why would he be doing this?
I really don't know. But we have to sit down and discuss this. What he did that day was wrong. I don't care what he says about it. He can go and scream on top of the roof. What he did that day was improper.
Advocate Thuli Madonsela is our guest this morning, CliffCentral's first birthday. It's Workers' Day, and we were just talking about the unions and how much you had to do with the formation of COSATU, the writing of our own constitution. I'm curious as to what kind of an average working day you have. Obviously, every day is different. But you get to the office. I mean, you've got a security detail. Most people don't have that. You have to have security.
Well, yes, maybe let's leave the security part aside.
But I think that's, for some people, it seems unnecessary. But I think you deal with a lot of very strange situations, some potentially dangerous people. You never know. You've had threats to your own life.
Well, yes, I've heard veiled threats, so to speak, in Twitter. I've had a dead cat thrown in front of my house, but not really serious. Somebody's standing there and saying they're about to kill you. I think the attack on me has been character assassination.
It's got very personal. It's got very personal sometimes.
Extremely personal. I mean, to be called a spy and a senior spy, for that matter.
For the CIA, they said that you were working for, counter-revolutionaries in the CIA, and I remember you saying, "Fine, if this is true, find the people I'm working with."
Oh no,
drag them out.
Well, they found the people I'm working with. Interestingly, whoever is asking people to do these things has not used the same team, and the teams are not even coming together to compare notes. So we have three narratives about me being a spy.
All right, let's hear them.
We have the first narrative, which has been there since shortly before the last election, and I even know who has been circulating it, although we met and we greet as if nothing ever happened.
Is that very awkward?
I don't know if he knows that I know, but I know.
Okay. Is this a senior person that we would know?
Oh, he is. Yes,
okay.
He is a senior person.
And this is the person who's circulating rumor number one, which is?
Rumor number one is I've been a spy since I was a student, and it was the CIA which even made me pass my first degree. That means I'm such an idiot. I couldn't even pass my degree.
Yes.
And the person who was supposed to have been my handler then and who's still my handler now arrived at the University of Swaziland 2 years after I'd left. In fact, the years that he was there, because I didn't know him, I thought they had invented him. Mm. It turns out that he was there exactly the 2 years I spent at Wits. But that's the time he then got me a degree at the University of Swaziland. No, but they didn't even do a thorough job, because I left there in 1987,
yes.
And that person was there 89, 90.
That was when you qualified with your LLB.
Exactly.
At Wits.
But they didn't even whoever was doing that job did such a shoddy job that they couldn't even do that. But then they had a narrative, this person is still with me. He has, he together with a certain judge decide which reports I'm going to do. Which begs the question.
Again, you can't make your own decisions. It's impossible that you're able to actually execute your orders.
Oh, no, even my reports are written by a certain judge, all of them. I'm such an idiot.
This is very insulting to you personally, but it's also, you now laugh about it. I mean, I can see you think it's ridiculous, but
it is.
In the beginning when these things are said, they are very damaging.
Well, they're meant to be damaging. Whether they are, I really think they only preach to the choir, because discerning people would not believe such ridiculous things. The second narrative, my handler is somebody in Parliament, and I'm working
in
with
the ANC or in opposition.
In opposition,
Oh,
in one of the opposition parties,
Right.
and I'm now working with a different group of people. But at least the one thing that is common to all of them is that I'm CIA, MI5, I'm Mossad.
I mean, you've got to be, you are definitely the most qualified spy in the world. You work for all three of probably the world's most incredible intelligence agencies.
Oh, absolutely. Since I've been a spy for more than 30 years, I'm a senior one. I even have money in the Cayman Islands.
Oh, that's nice.
Millions and millions of rand.
You got a yacht?
Probably.
We'll have to ask him.
With so much money in my pocket. Why not?
What's narrative number 3?
Narrative number 3 is the one that came now with this blog that came 3 days before the State of the Nation address, and disappeared again 3 days after the State of the Nation address. It appeared on the 9th of February, and the blog disappeared on the 16th of February. And
What
then
did they say?
the Twitter account appeared on the 9th of February and disappeared on the 13th of February. That's the one that links me to Lindiwe Mazibuko, who I recruited. I mean, CIA is so dumb that they wouldn't recruit Lindiwe Mazibuko directly themselves.
Yeah.
They need me.
They needed
and
you.
then 2, I collect information, intelligence information about leaders of Africa that don't like America. And I do so through my colleagues. How ridiculous is that? Why would the CIA want secondary information about leaders that do not like America? Because my colleagues would also be using secondary information. So why would CIA want such a roundabout way to collect intelligence?
I don't know if you know, but there's a narrative number 4. There's one that you don't even know about yet that I'm going to reveal to you now this morning. This is the first time ever.
Yes.
That's Advocate Thuli Madonsela. The 4th narrative about where you actually are from and what kind of a spy you are has to do with the fact that you are going to be in the new Bond movie as the villain. Did you know that? You're actually going to appear as M, who turns rogue and tries to kill James Bond. That's you in the next Bond movie. You want to tell everybody now? You've been cast in the role. It's very exciting. That's where she's heading next year to film the new Bond movie. You and an Aston Martin. It's going to be very exciting.
Oh my God.
That's ridiculous. I think it's great that you can laugh about it. Because a lot of people also say part of the character assassination is that you are boring. They say terrible things about your appearance, which must hurt. I mean, listen, they must hurt. I look in the mirror some mornings, and I've had people criticize me because I've been on television and all the rest for years. And it can be nasty, and some days you're fine with it because you've got things to do. But on a bad day, have you ever cried in the shower?
No, I think if you read my letter to my 16-year-old self,
I love
you would know that as a young person I was teased. The good thing about being teased or bullied as a young person is that you develop a very strong internal core. But also the good thing about having a father like mine, who was a very tough, sergeant father, is that you really are not fazed by little things. So no, I don't cry in the shower. I feel sorry for those people, actually. And I think if they have to resort to my look, my nose, my head, my hair, and things like that, surely they must really dislike me, and I must really be a problem to them. They spend so much time creating stories about me, and I really feel sorry for them because they are really sad souls. Seriously, I feel sorry for them.
Do you have to keep explaining to people, and I think this must be frustrating for you, that you are not pro-ANC, anti-ANC, pro-DA, anti-DA, pro-EFF, anti-EFF, that you are trying to do your job, which doesn't involve their politics often?
The good thing is that Royal ANC knows the truth. I admit, the true sons of the liberation movement and the true daughters of the liberation movement, I still meet with them every day in the ANC. They know that I'm not pro DA, pro-ANC, pro-IFP, anti this one. They just know. And every day I meet them, they say, keep up doing the right job. And we need you. We invented this office because we knew that we could lose track. And it helps to be told when we lose track, because we have to keep earning the trust of the people every day.
And that's so important, that this office was created by all these parties. I mean, some of them didn't exist when it was created, but the ANC was there at the inception of this Public Protector Office. It didn't exist in the old regime. There was no way to have checks and balances and power then.
Well, incidentally, the Public Protector existed in the old regime.
It did?
Not as the Public Protector. Initially, it was called the Advocate General, and it only did the work that I now do in the good governance and integrity work. And then later they
was it any good at that?
Well, I'm not.
Did it have any oversight at all?
Because we never heard about it.
No.
I'm not sure that it did the right thing, but it then added the ombudsman function, which is what now belongs to our branch, which is called Administrative Justice and Service Delivery, and then it was called then the Ombudsman Office in the early 90s, and then after the constitutional negotiations, there was a decision that they needed a stronger office that would be at arm's length from government, and that would offer people real remedies. And then the Constitution came up with this wording of the Public Protector has the power to investigate any conduct in state affairs that is regarded as improper or suspected as improper, to report on it and to take appropriate remedial action. That came after a decision to have a much stronger office to ensure that we have a much stronger constitutional democracy.
Advocate Madonsela, do you often get upset that people pit you against the president? Like it's a single-minded, one-dimensional, man-on-man violence situation, man-on-woman violence situation, where the president is on one side and you're on the other, and it's a boxing match. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. And you're not opposed to the president per se.
Absolutely. In fact, it saddens me because we are the president's agency on one of the laws. The Public Protector, in terms of some of our functions, we report to Parliament, or broadly in everything we do, we report to Parliament. But in some of our functions, our partner in ensuring that remedies take place is Parliament. But when it comes to Executive Members Ethics Act, we are a support structure to the President. So it's not good to be put in that situation as if we're opposed to the President. We're actually a partner of the President in terms of helping him ensure that there is ethical conduct among members of the executive, and when there are lapses in terms of ethics, he's able to know what those lapses are and to take action to correct the situation. And that has been the case over the last 6 years of my role as Public Protector. This distortion in terms of what we do has just happened recently, and it's really sad.
When you deal with the president, I'm sure it's often, the two of you obviously professional people who have a job to do.
Absolutely.
But do you feel that job has become slightly more complicated? That maybe people's feelings have entered the fray, and that now meeting with the president is either awkward for him or awkward for you, or awkward for people in support roles for both of you?
It may be awkward to people in support roles for the both of us. My meeting with him per se has been very cordial, and I didn't sense any hostility.
No sweaty palms when you shook his hand or anything like that?
No, not really. We have shook hands and hugged. In fact, the last time, one of the meetings...
I hope he didn't make a move on you. No inappropriate behavior.
No inappropriate. I've had a very excellent professional relationship with the president. When I started, the president told me that he would like me to operate without fear or favor. And he didn't
wink. He didn't wink when he said that, though.
No, he said this was important to him.
Okay.
Because when he wasn't deputy president, when he was out in the cold, he applied to the Public Protector and asked the Public Protector to adjudicate his matter. And the Public Protector did not look at who was the president then and therefore gravitate towards that person. The Public Protector just looked at what was fair and determined the matter in favor of President Zuma, who was at that stage not a deputy president.
He was in the wilderness,
Exactly.
and he'd been forgotten by everybody.
Exactly.
With the exception of the friends of Jacob Zuma at that stage, really.
Exactly. So I think the message he gave me then was that I shouldn't look at who's in power. I shouldn't look at who I like. I should look at what are the facts. What does the law and the rest of the regulatory framework say about it, and make a determination that can be objectively justified.
Have you ever been in a position with respect to the president where you have had to choose between what is right for the country and what is right for him?
Every time I investigate, not just for the president, I put myself in the shoes of whoever I have to make a determination against, and also look at what is right and wrong. And then I try to strike a balance between empathy for whoever I am about to judge and the truth that I need to tell. So it's not about the president for me.
Absolutely.
It is about everyone. But the point you are raising, though...
But have you ever been in that situation?
Yes, for people like the president and all people who have been my comrades, there is a much more so wound in my soul when I have to judge them, because you know that these are people we've shared a cup of tea with. These are people we've shared a meal with.
Sometimes people have put their life on the line for the situation we're in now.
Exactly. And you wish you could come up with a different decision, but you have to make a decision that is not only justified in law, but that is consistent with the decision you made yesterday when you were dealing with somebody you have never known before.
And have you ever been asked to make that choice?
I've never been asked, thank goodness. You would know that with the Secure in Comfort report. I was never asked to make a choice, but I was asked not to proceed with the investigation initially because it was seen that somebody else was handling it, and then at some stage it was no. There is the security matters were beyond my remit, but again we sorted it out. We sat with the ministers in the security cluster, and thanks to Minister Khatebe and Minister Nosiviwe Mapisangakula, who understood the law, we clarified what I can and what I can't do, and we're able to proceed.
What is it like at Nkandla? You've been there. You're one of the few people who've been there. Is it very impressive? Is it a nice simple place, or is it quite complex? Is it how much can you talk about?
Well, incidentally, we didn't go there as tourists.
But I want to know. I mean, is it? What does it look like inside?
No, we're not supposed to talk about that, unfortunately.
Oh, I really thought I'd get an insider's view.
That would be using information that we gathered for one purpose for a different purpose. And in terms of the law, we're only supposed to use information we gathered for the purposes.
How much is a loaf of bread at Kumalo's tuck shop, for example? You can't tell me that.
We didn't ask those questions. That was not the purpose of our visit.
Is there a disco ball in one of the rooms? I mean, this is very relevant information, Public Protector.
No, it's not. No.
Have you ever felt, though, in the execution of your duty that you've been leaned upon? That you have had an undue influence that has been brought to bear? I doubt very much you would have given in to such an influence, but have you ever felt insecure in executing your responsibilities?
No, I have not been, and we've discussed this with women in leadership positions, and some of my colleagues or those who worked before me have said that it helps to be a woman, because you don't play golf with anyone. You don't sit with people in a bar and drink where maybe certain things could be discussed informally and you're supposed to read between the lines. If somebody needs to meet with me, they have to request a formal meeting, so that those opportunities don't rise. But
is it harder as a woman in some ways too? Because what you say about golf, and that's almost jocular and conjectural.
Yes.
The real challenge here is that being a woman in South Africa, those playing fields are far from level.
No,
and there's a
absolutely.
lot of chauvinism. And I would imagine that there are sometimes things that you're reading between the lines when people will send you communiques, and you'll think, I don't know that this person respects me.
Well, fortunately, in written communication, I haven't experienced that. But when somebody talks to you like they're talking to a child, I often wonder whether if I was Advocate Mushwana, the Public Protector, they would talk to me like that, as some of the things that recently happened in Parliament. I don't know whether it's gender, whether some people are traditionalists, because one of the things that he mentioned in Parliament, for example, I said that when I came here, I expected to be given the same courtesies that are given to ministers and the president. And one parliamentarian said that I shouldn't elevate that to the cases of ministers, and because that is different. And I am shocked that he would say that, because our constitution requires that everyone should be treated with human dignity, with equality. It doesn't say unless you are not a minister. But also when it comes to the provisions of the law that deal with my accountability to Parliament, the word is very similar to that for the ministers and the president. Mm-hmm. But the way some of them talk to me, I ask myself that I wouldn't even talk to my staff member like that. We're trying to help you. I mean, it's like a father talking to a 4-year-old child.
In other words, it's patronizing.
It's patronizing. And I don't know whether people listen to themselves before they say these things. Because we are grown people, we're professionals who have been given jobs after we were determined to be fit and proper people to do that. And for another grown person to talk at you instead of to you is shocking.
Are you married? Do you have children? I don't know anything about you in that respect.
I'm not married. I have children. I had a partner who was a permanent partnership, sort of, and it's a long story about why we didn't get married. And he passed on. But I have 2 children.
I'm sorry.
Wenzile, who is a 3rd-year LLB student at the University of Pretoria.
I imagine huge pressure.
Yes.
Huge pressure. I mean, if your mum is this accomplished woman with so much responsibility at her fingertips, I imagine that there must be just unbelievable pressure on this poor child.
I don't know. I think my children are their own persons. My son is a Steve Jobs wannabe.
Oh, yeah?
And he did theology studies until 3rd year and dropped his theology and is now doing part-time business studies. But he's following his heart as a
From
business
the church
person.
to business, essentially.
Exactly. And,
wow.
But all of them have minds of their own. But by my own standards, and forgive me if this sounds like a parent, they're good human beings.
You're allowed to be a little...
I really think they're good human beings.
The one place I don't think you should be objective is with your kids. You're allowed to be a little subjective there, I think.
Right, thank you.
Do you love what you do? It seems to me that you love it and you're good at it, which is always the recipe for success. You love the execution of the law. You love to see justice done. You like to see that Gogo get her money that she wasn't given.
I really do. It gives me a great sense of joy. That's why I'm able to deal with some of the strange behaviors that I come across, because the work itself is so gratifying. But I also work with such a delightful team. When I say I love my job, I'm not sure who loves this job more between me and my staff members. You should meet that team. They always
I've met Advocate Kevin Malunga, who's your deputy.
He's a just person himself.
Absolutely. I mean, he did admit to me, and maybe you want to deal with this when you get back to the office. He admitted to me that he's tired of you getting all the glamorous jobs, and he has to deal with some lady who didn't get her pension or something. He says you get all the really exciting political jobs, all the governance stuff. And
oh, he didn't say that to me, but we have restructured. Well, I'm sure he's happy now, because without him telling me what he was unhappy about, I restructured in such a way that he deals with all service delivery, including the systemic investigations on service delivery.
Okay, so there's no more issues between the two of you?
No, I think it's good sometimes to have a storming phase in a relationship, because it then allows yourself to define your different roles and to form a solid relationship. We have such a solid relationship. We still differ in terms of thinking, and I like the fact that he is a very opinionated young person, and he at meetings he raises views if he has an alternative view, but it then shapes the conversation, and then ultimately I often see what I didn't see previously, and we move in a different direction.
Do you think maybe that some of the reasons that people like Gwede Mantashe are so vitriolic occasionally about the role you play and how you don't know what your job is? He tells you every now and then that your mandate is something he understands that you don't.
Which is terrible.
But do you think sometimes maybe you just intimidate a lot of these people because you're cerebral and because you're confident, and maybe for a lot of people it's too much to deal with?
But why should it be? I don't know what's people's stories, but my job is not defined by me, it's defined by the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear that I have to investigate any conduct in state affairs that is considered to be improper. And that is any conduct. But of course, I'm given then the discretion to decide what to take and what not to take. And that discretion is exercised with a group of people in 20 offices. So when they attack me, for example, sometimes and say, I take things that I shouldn't take, they don't know that they're actually insulting 322 people, because people in my office know that the Public Protector didn't make that decision, we made it. So these grown people are insulting us.
Finally, I just need to know why you always must stand in the way. If someone can get their hands on some perfectly good state funds, I don't know why you keep getting in the way and ruining it for them. These people are just trying to have their share.
Well,
come on. I mean, what's wrong with you, Advocate Madonsela? Why don't you just let people get their hands in the honeypot?
I'm actually a friend of those people, because there's a saying, an African saying that says you don't relieve yourself upstream because you're going to drink downstream. So if we take away the money,
yes,
we're creating an unstable society. And when a society becomes unstable, people start burning things and destroying things. None of us are safe. So I'm a friend of even those people who are improperly enriching themselves or unlawfully enriching themselves in violation of Section 6 of the Public Protector Act.
How long do we still have you? I mean, how long do you keep this office, and when is your term over?
I think I'm left with about 17 months. I will be leaving office on the 14th of October 2016.
And what do you do then? What are we going to do?
Well, for a year, I am going to be on a sabbatical. But what are we going to do? We're going to continue what we're doing as a nation, because we have a strong integrity sector in South Africa. It's not just the Public Protector. We have a very strong Auditor General team. It has always been strong and has always done the right thing. We have the Hawks, the SIU.
But the Hawks are in a slight
yes.
disarray at the moment.
But we also have a strong Public Protector team. The decisions I make are ultimately mine, but how those decisions come about, it's a whole lot of men and women of integrity that just look at what happened, what should have happened, is there discrepancy, and if there is, does it constitute improper conduct, and if it is improper conduct, how do we fix it? That's not done by me, it's done by a whole team. I just have to work with the team and ultimately be persuaded. And whoever comes in will step into the same situation with exactly the same strong and dedicated team. And I'm certain that that team, together with that person, will make sure that we do the right thing. But also, you said that the people are the real protectors of the Constitution. So the people will still be here, and the people will still protect their own Constitution, which is their greatest heritage.
I want you to do two things for me. The first one is a question that I need answered. And the second one is I need you to give away one of these smartphones. Are you allowed to do that? Does that fall outside of your mandate as well? I think we'll leave that for the next show. Don't worry about the phone.
Right.
If there's a young woman or a young man in South Africa who admires you and admires your work and admires the office of the Public Protector, but more especially this courage, and they want to do something like you're doing that really helps people, that changes people's lives, and that keeps power in check, what advice do you have for those people?
Follow your heart, follow your vision, study at school, do whatever job that comes your way as you go through your life, and do it to the best of your ability whilst you're following your vision. Because it doesn't start with waking up as Public Protector. It starts with knowing what you feel strongly about. I felt strongly about justice, and feeling strongly about justice has brought me here. And if you feel strongly about justice, this is the right office. But you might not be a public protector. You might be a judge. You might be a magistrate. You might be the Auditor General. Whatever you feel strongly about, do it. And you might be a politician. We want politicians. And I think you said something remarkable earlier, and that politicians ideally should be lawyers. I actually think that every politician should study law, so that when you make a law, you understand the fundamentals of law, and you understand how this then will impact on society.
Advocate Thuli Madonsela, thank you so much for coming to speak to us this morning on this very special day for us. It's our birthday, on a special day for you, not only because you were involved in the formation of COSATU and things like that, but because frankly you deserve a holiday. And you do get the rest of the day off, hey?
I do.
Oh,
Thank
nice.
you.
Are your CIA handlers outside going to let you enjoy brunch with us, or are we going to have to get rid of them?
Possibly, because we want to spy on you as well.
I know, that's why you're really here. I've already figured it out.
Certainly.
Thank you so much for the work that you do for this country. You know, I don't need to. You get uncomfortable, I think, when people make too much of a fuss of you, because you see it as a job. I'm not wrong here.
It is a job,
but I do
like
think,
any other.
But you are doing a sterling job, and
Thank
we're all
you.
very, very grateful for your presence in the machinery of state.
Thank you, and keep up your good work here. Keep up with supporting freedom of expression.
Right, now we're going to sing. No, I'm kidding. You looked very nervous for a second there. Thank you, Thuli Madonsela. Pleasure to meet you, ma'am. Thank you very, very much. It is our birthday. CliffCentral.com turns 1 today, and I want to thank everybody who's been a part of the journey for the last 12 months. There are many more to come. We have so much to do. We have so much to look forward to. If you watched the first streaming un-TV interview this morning, then that is a little bit of the future brought into the present, and we're going to keep on reinventing and making things amazing for you. So thank you for everything that you've done as a listener, as a member of our team, as someone who's been there right from the start, or as someone who's just joined us today. CliffCentral.com. Just after 10. Thank you. John T's going to kill me because I kept him waiting. John T and Sexy Spider, and we're going to continue our birthday celebrations. Casper de Friesson at 11, and through the afternoon, O'Neill, Aria Kelman, lots.